Folks, welcome to another Voxcast No Retreat Tournament special, where we cover my exploits at the last No Retreat tournaments hosted by SM Battle Reports with Bone.
Yeah.
To have a nice chat about it.
I'm just going to be here to talk.
No, you weren't at the tournament, were you?
I wasn't. I don't know why I'm in the Voxcast, but you just can't get enough of me, so here I am.
Well, I thought it'd be nice to talk to you about it and just the games as well, you see.
I'll just change my seat.
That's nice. Yeah. Let me tell you a story.
All right, come on.
Are you going to look at me like that the whole time?
Would that be off-putting?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back over here.
I mean, you can if you like.
No, it's fine.
Right. Now, Stig obviously did go to the No Retreat tournament as well.
Yeah.
However, Stig couldn't be here today, so he will talk about his own experience in his games, perhaps during a battle report. I think he may have already spoken about it recently on
we had a game recently, and he's touched on his thoughts, because his army is now very different. Has to be.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't have to be, but is.
No, and so perhaps because of that as well, him being the Voxcast is not as relevant, because the entire tactics of his army have literally changed. Because he was running 2 blobs of 20 Electro Priests, and starting them 9 inches away from the opponent.
Yeah, he obviously didn't go to make friends.
No, he took a nasty list for sure. We'll discuss that another time. But for now, for you Grey Knight fans, we're going to be discussing Grey Knights in detail, plus all 5 of my games at the No Retreat tournaments. But before that, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about what No Retreat is, just in case you are not familiar. So No Retreat is an ITC tournament in the regard that they give you ITC points, and it's part of the ITC League, the Independent Tournament Circuit League. However, it is not ITC missions. They run their own missions, and there are some restrictions to the army builds. So what they do is they encourage mono-faction armies. There are some allies allowed, but generally not. Like, for example, if you're running a Khorne Chaos army, you are only allowed to ally with a Khorne Demons detachment. So you'd have to share the same marked keywords. You could ally with Knights if you're a Guard, etc. Yeah. So there are some things that you can do, but generally speaking, it's single faction armies, and you have to apply to get into No Retreat via the SM Battle Reports website, and what you get are, generally speaking, an amazing array of armies on beautifully painted boards with amazing terrain, and it's a hobby weekend. There is a tournament there as well, but you're not going to go and expect to see the most cutthroat things that you've ever seen. It's not like the LVO or something. No.
And the way the restrictions they put on it actually prohibit that from happening.
They do.
If you want to kind of test bed lists, or you want to take more fluffy sorts of lists, then SN is a great place to go. Yeah,
it really encourages it, and I really enjoy their tournament format, I have to say. It's fun to play, and it creates interesting armies, so less of the usual suspects that you would expect to see in a tournament currently. So that's No Retreat, that's SM Battle Reports. Let's start going over the Grey Knights list that I took. That's coming up next. Right, Grey Knight fans, assemble. All of us here in 8th edition. Not many left. Still, they are awesome. I've not really met many people that don't like them, fluff-wise. I've met plenty of people that don't like the rules currently, that's fair enough. So, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's post-FAQ 2, big FAQ 2. And actually, the way the FAQ worked, funnily enough, didn't really change wouldn't have changed the outcome of my results at No Retreat, although it would have on paper made me question some of the choices that I'd taken beforehand. So let me go over the list. There's one choice in particular which people looked at, and even at the No Retreat event they were like, you're mad. Because they're not an obviously good choice, but we'll cover them as we come to it. So the No Retreat tournament was a 1750 point event. Traditionally, it's been 2,000 in the past, so slightly less points, but it did give you a really comfortable amount of time to finish your games in. And being Grey Knights, being quite a small army, I found that I could finish all of my games really with plenty of time to spare. I think I regularly had over an hour to complete, so it was, you know, left, so it was quite good. So what did we do? We took a battalion detachment. We sadly couldn't afford a third character to get something like an Outrider or a Vanguard or whatever the case may be, so we were limited to 8 command points. You know, Grey Knights struggle with command points in general. A lot of their really good stratagems, you tend to pay just a lot more, double in fact, that another faction would. So for example, Psychic Onslaught, which increases the strength and reduces and the AP of my Gatling Silencer and my Heavy Psy Cannon, costs 2 CP, where similar stratagems in newer books would only cost 1 CP. Right. We do have a couple of very good stratagems which are cheap though, like Only in Death does Duty End. That only costs 1 CP for us, whereas the Space Marines it costs 2.
Okay, win.
Yeah, although ironically I'd spent all of my command points by the time any of my characters had died to be able to use that anyway, so didn't even come up. But you know, so Grey Knight stratagems overall are a little bit too expensive versus what they do for you. So 8 command points wasn't ideal, but it was all I had. So in order to get the battalion, I needed 2 HQ. I went for the classic. He is a good unit. He is still expensive, but I went for the Grand Master in Dread Knight armor because he's good for his, you know, for his points. He works. He's got 6 strength, 7 shots from his Heavy Psy Cannon I gave him. He's got 12 strength, 4 shots, which are damage D3 from his Gatling Silencer. I gave him the sword, so he had D6 damage in combat. And I did actually pay for the Dread Knight teleporter, although I didn't use that in any of the games.
But it's only like 10 points, right?
It is only 10 points, and it's nice to have the option. But again, No Retreat did, or SN rather, did an amazing job with the boards, and they really did have generous amounts of terrain on every board. There was plenty of line of sight blocking, and just due to a bit of deployment shenanigans, where I'd wait with my Dread Knight to deploy him out of range of a lot of nasty stuff, and or be able to hide him, I found I didn't need to actually teleport in, which is good because it meant that I could use Gate of Infinity to get him across the board. Now, psychic power wise, I went for Sanctuary. And the trick here is Sanctuary increases your invulnerable save by 1 to a maximum of 3+. Okay. Now, there's a common misconception because the FAQ said Sanctuary cannot give you an invulnerable save better than 3+, that Grey Knights therefore can't get a 2+ invulnerable save. That is incorrect. Okay, so it can be used in conjunction with Heed the Prognosticars, which doesn't increase your invulnerable save, it just adds 1 to your saving roll. So it gives you an effective 2+ invulnerable save, but actually your invulnerable save is 3+. Now the reason they did the FAQ in Sanctuary is so that someone like Drago couldn't easily get a 2+. Just because it's very easy to cast Sanctuary. It's only like Warp Charge 5, so it's like bam, it's really easy. Or it might be Warp Charge 6, but you get +1 because of Brotherhood of Psykers. So you know, that was the sort of the abuse they were stopping. Now it may be that GW missed that Heed the Prognosticars would still work in conjunction with it. I don't think they did, but it just maybe the intention was that you just couldn't get a 3+, but actually rules is written 2+, but actually rules is written you effectively can. But bear in mind, guys, it costs 2 command points. It's done at the beginning of your turn, so you have to be on the board to use it, hence why I liked keeping the Dread Knight on the boards.
Yeah.
And you need to cast Sanctuary on top of that. So there are 2 things that need to go on, plus you need to be on the board in the first place for it to become a 2+ effective.
So the risk of the Alpha Strike is real.
Right. So, you know, it is good, don't get me wrong, but you can only protect 1 Grandmaster in that way, and he is just shy of 300 points at 285 points. So, you know, it's not even a particularly nasty thing. It's just it's a nice little trick. It's something that Grey Knights currently have. So bear that in mind for my next HQ. Drago, Heed the Prognosticars could also be used on him to give him an effective 2+. Yeah, it is possible. Right, Drago. 240 points. He is a beast. He does nasty things in combat. He does give a reroll hit aura. Overall, though, as you'll see in my games, which we'll cover very shortly, I don't feel that I ever got the true return out of him. He very rarely, one of the games he was pretty good, to be fair, but the majority of the games I played, he wasn't doing too much. And we played a couple of games on demand, and we found, again, consistently the same thing.
Yeah, well, he seems to kind of babysit your Venerable Dreadnoughts for the most time. And to effectively get... Because all you're getting is reroll 1s at that point, because they hit on 2s anyway.
So I could just have a normal Grandmaster to do that.
Yeah,
if I wanted to.
Save some points.
So, yeah, Drago is really good, but because of the beta deep strike rules still in play, I found I wasn't really able to deliver him. And he would get funny things like... In turn 2, when I finally did want to gate him forwards after the Dread Knight was already up there, I fail the casting roll with a Perils.
Very good. Was it at least a Peril? No, we're double one Perils. It's unlike you.
Oh, I was having doozies at this no retreat. Yes, like real doozies. It's new army syndrome is what I call it. Because I hadn't played with the army before I got to no retreat. So. Those are the 2 HQ. We then had in the troops, we had Strike Marines, which are the standard troops for Grey Knights. Sadly, the Terminators being too expensive at the moment for what they do. I couldn't afford Terminators, even though they're the iconic unit of the Grey Knights. They wouldn't have really worked. So I took 3 units of Strike Marines, 2 units of 5. All of them had falchions.
Yes.
Because the falchions give you an additional attack. Now, unfortunately... Grey Knight's base attacks only 1, which never made sense to me because they're supposed to be the elite of the elites and they're certainly paying veteran points and they've only got 1 base attack. So at least the Falchions then effectively gives you 2 base attacks. Their strength user, -2, damage D3. So they're pretty tasty in combat and they all come with Storm Bolters which kick out an incredible amount of firepower at rapid fire range. So 2 units of 5 and 1 unit of 10. Which would come in to do a nice beta strike, or I could split them up and have an additional smite or whatever the case may be. So it was quite flexible and I quite enjoyed that. So they worked quite well. Then I had, this is the controversial choice, not 1, not 2, but 3 Venerable Dreadnoughts. What do you think of the Venerable Dreadnoughts?
Well, I think they do what they say on the tin, if that makes sense. They just kind of, they'll sit back. We've played a couple of games now. One game they were not that great. One game they were really good.
Yeah.
It depends what's happening in the centre of the board, really.
Yeah, true.
True. So I mean, but hitting on 2s is nice if they don't move, and you are rerolling 1s, and the fact that one of them can shoot when it doesn't even need to see.
Astrolabe.
Astrolabe makes them nice.
Yeah.
They're all. I mean, but yeah, how many points is it for 3?
The problem is that they, like Grey Knights in generals, that you are paying just an obnoxious amount of points. So okay. Venerable Dreadnought, 185 points.
Right.
Twin las cannon and a missile launcher. Ideally, I would have liked twin las cannon and twin auto cannon.
Yeah.
But that makes them like 197. Now, 185 points for an 8 wounds, toughness 7, 3-up save chassis when... Alright, granted, one of them can cast Astral Aim and hide, and they've got a damage 1 smite at 12-inch range. For the other 2, if you happen to be within 12-inch range of your shooty Dreadnoughts. But the reality is you can get a Helverin for 174 points, so it's cheaper, who has 4 more wounds, a 5+ invulnerable save, and a much better rate of fire with a flat 3 damage weapon. And stratagems that help it against flyers and...
Yeah, and it can move. It can move and shoot without penalty, so you can hide it to begin with anyway, and then just move out and shoot.
So we can see there's a problem here.
Well, I mean, Grey Knights are just the subject to the Codex creep. That's I think when they came out. Having said that, though, even when they came out, everyone was a bit like.
Yeah, they were a bit underwhelmed. But actually, when they first came out, I thought they were quite good. But you were doing that. I didn't think they were amazing, but you were doing that off the back of the Space Marine Codex.
Yeah.
Which that was quite comparable then. Space Marines had a lot more options, but you know, stratagems were still very much in there at their teething stage, you know, and we just didn't have the wealth of really powerful stratagems that are in the game now, and the wealth of access to, you know, an abundant amount of command points. So you ended up Grey Knights, and back then you could deep strike turn 1, you know, so Grey Knights had some tricks, you felt, but then you started releasing more and more books, and the points were seeming to go down more and more, and the Space Marine points were going up more and more. Actually, just mainly because of Guilliman, where it was him that needed to be addressed, rather than everything else. That Grey Knights just ended up falling down to probably, I think it's fair to say, the worst army in the game right now. So, you know, they do, unfortunately, you know, as cool as they are, they do unfortunately have some problems with their points. But overall, the Venerable Dreadnoughts did really well for me. You know, they are highly underestimated. They gave me reliable las cannon fire, which is something which I really needed in the Grey Knight army, and that extra crap missile really helped as well.
Yeah.
And they did the job that they needed to. And the reason I took 3 is, 1 is actually quite popular with Grey Knight players right now, to just do Astral Aim and hide. But if 1's already quite good, why not take more? So that if 1's destroyed, then I can hide another one, and you can play pass the parcel. And I found that, you look, not for their points, they are still overcosted, but they did fill a gap that my army needed, because Grey Knights really struggle with armour. It's kind of their worst matchup, generally speaking, so you need something to be able to open it up so that your Storm Bolters and combat can be more effective. So the idea, and this is where the post FAQ would have really would have worried me, if you like, is I had this little trick where I thought, I'm going to use the Teleportarium stratagem to protect them, so that if someone could alpha strike my anti-tank, if I didn't go first, I'd just go, I'd spend 3 CP, and I'd put each one of them in the Teleportarium, so they could deep strike into my own deployment zone and then still shoot anyway.
Can't do it anymore.
I can't even do that anymore.
Can't do it.
But then, funnily enough, I discovered at No Retreat, again because of the boards, and the Dreadnought, this is the other thing, as opposed to something like a Razorback, they're a lot easier to hide.
Oh yeah.
They're a small little chassis, really. You know, they're not that long. It's quite easy to tuck them in behind a cargo container or something. And I found it easy to hide them, to be honest, guys. I really did. And as a result, I never had to teleport them in, which is good, because I didn't want to hemorrhage those command points just before beginning the game anyway. And it turned out I never did have to, so it was really good. However, my next trick would be with them to take either the Doomglaive, which is a Forge World Dreadnought, or to pay the gross amount of points just for the close combat weapon. Then you could deep strike them in next to something like your Dread Knight. But at 1750, I didn't have the points for that anyway. I would have if I ended up taking Voldus instead of Drago, but that's not the case, because then you can get the combat, the duality as well. But look, for the purposes of No Retreat, they did their job. So then we had the final choice of interceptors. I had 1 unit of 10 interceptors. Now again, this is a 250 point unit. Yes, they all did have falchions. So yes, they all had storm bolters. And yes, they could technically perform a 0-inch charge, and funnily enough, post the FAQ, they still can. However, I mentioned to my opponents when playing at No Retreat, I didn't think that was in the spirit of the rules, and because No Retreat had lots of level terrain, lots of it. So there were many instances where I could have done a 0-inch charge. And for those of you which aren't familiar, it's my unit appears up here on a piece of terrain, and their unit's down here. I am 9 inches height away, but I am actually only 2 inches away in terms of moving horizontally. So what you do is you just go up here, and then you go, charge. Oh, double 1, I still make it. Now, the reason interceptors can still do it is they were the only one in the big FAQ which didn't get an FAQ, and they do not have the fly keyword, where they FAQ'd Harlequins with flip belts so that they can't charge over models or terrain. Wraiths. They forgot to do it, and I believe genuinely they forgot to do it with the interceptors.
It doesn't make any sense.
No. So even if I went to a tournament now, even though I technically could do it, I still wouldn't do it. But it is.
But that's not stopping you at home.
It's not stopping you at home. I mean, if you are mad enough to take Grey Knights to a GT, well done.
Yeah.
I think I'm the last of us that is.
Yeah.
But, you know, whatever. So, there we go. 10 interceptors. They did serious work, being able to redeploy once per game, or more than that actually, if you spend a command points on them. And in having a 12-inch move, I felt that I was really able to get them into position. I did take Astral Aim on this unit. I never ended up using it, funnily enough. I just kept doing it on the Dreadnought, but I had this idea in my head that I'd have them appear behind a ruin, and then put 40 shots in with Drago gating behind them, just re-rolling all of the hits. And then you could put the Cybolt ammunition on, so it's 40 strength 5 -1 shots. Funny enough, I never needed to cast Astral Aim on them. It just never came up. And look, when they got into combat, they did the business semi-reliably. If Drago happens to be nearby, then they could get the rerolls to hit as well. And they are a great unit. The problem is they're a toughness 4, 3-up armor save units. They die really easily, and you're paying 250 points for 10 Space Marine models. Are they good? Yes. Are they worth 250 points? No. But you're forced to, again, with the Beta Deep Strike rules, have certain things on the boards to be able to apply pressure and remove enemy screens. You know, this is like my screen clearance unit, that and the Dread Knight, turn 1 if you like. You're forced to do that to be able to compete, if you like. Not that I would take competing with Grey Knights seriously. So, what was I thinking when I took this list? It was 1750 on the nose. Well, obviously I'd won the last No Retreat tournaments with a very, very powerful Elder list.
Yeah,
very powerful, grossly powerful.
Yeah.
And I said to them, because that was my 4th win for No Retreat, and so this is the 7th one, and I said to them, the next time I'm not going to take a powerful army. I'm going to take an army which I really love. In this instance, pretty much my favourite army, which are Grey Knights, right up there with Drukhari. And I wanted to really challenge myself, so I didn't go there, you know, expecting to dominate and destroy all. I did this as a test bed, really, for the Grey Knights, because I would like to continue running them.
Yeah.
This ITC season, or this tournament season, if you like. And hopefully, if they get a great chapter approved, then, you know, maybe they'll be more viable for something like the LVO too. But currently, the madness in me is wanting to take them to the Alliance Open, which is the Dutch Grand Tournaments, which again, you know, I'm not expecting to do incredibly with them, but as we'll see in these games, you can win with Grey Knights, and you could, you know, with the right draws, do a 5 for 5 result at a tournament. You absolutely could, because people do underestimate them. So let's talk about the games then. Let's go into this in detail.
Delve a bit deeper.
It's coming up next. Right, let's cover the games. Games and the tactics. Let's see how I ended up doing, shall we? So, as I've said, I won't discuss Stig's results, but I would like to start. Actually, I'll do the I'll do that at the end. So ignore that.
Okay. I'm excited. Don't know what that means.
So right, no, I don't want to give anything away. So right, here we go. So what we have first up is an awesome game against Matthew Whalen from the US of A. He flew all the way from the States, which is awesome.
Whereabouts?
I don't know where he lives in the States actually.
Let us know, Matthew.
Yeah, don't know where he lives in the States, but what I can tell you is that his World Eater army is beautiful. It's so well painted. Look, it was a pleasure to play. He was an awesome opponent. Good banter, and an interesting game actually. It ended in a dominant victory, but it could have easily gone the other way. So he was doing World Eaters, you know, in the best. Again, they're struggling a bit like Grey Knights as well. Yeah. You know, but he was doing the best he could with the options he had. So as I recall, there'll be pictures of the game coming up on the screen as I speak. He had 2 Helldrakes, which against me are actually, I don't think that they're a good option overall, but against me they are good, because I've got lots of power armor Marines, and if he rolls well on the Helldrake Flamer, you know, he's just killing them for fun.
Yeah.
You know. And I really wanted to go first. Now, I didn't end up going first. He went first.
Okay.
But he had 2 Helldrakes, 3 units of Berserkers. He had Khan.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he had a Dark Apostle in there as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, he had an Exalted Champion rather than a Dark Apostle.
Right.
He had 2 units of Obliterators.
Okay.
Which is, the Oblits are obviously good. They're still a good unit. He did wait until turn 2 to bring them into range, because the way that I deployed is I backlined.
Yeah.
So that if he dropped in his Obliterators turn 1, which he could back then, he would still be out of range. So, forced him, if you like, to have to wait another turn. So all I had on the board, in the corner of the board actually, was my Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knights, the 3 Dreadnoughts, and I had the Interceptors, as I recall, deployed on like the opposite corner, just to sort of spread things out, and I knew that they could redeploy anyway. So game kicked off, he opened up, and I have to say, Matthew, you were just really unlucky, dudes. He didn't even kill a Dreadnought.
Oh dear.
And between 2 Helldrakes, because he charged as well, guys, yeah? Because the Helldrakes move like 30 inches. So
yeah.
So between 2 Bellflamers, the charges, and obviously he started moving his Rhinos into position, going for as many Maelstrom points as he could, he failed to kill a Dreadnought. And so you're like, oh. What could he do at that stage? Nothing, so... Unlucky, so that meant that in my turn, I was able to retaliate, and because they have the demon keywords, I was able to smite the Helldrake that was in combat, because he failed one of his charges with the Helldrake as well, which just sucked. Yeah, so we were both looking at each other like, oh, dude.
It's good that there's beer at the event when things happen.
That's right, yeah. So, he didn't do anything wrong. He did the right thing, trying to tie up the Dreadnoughts. Well, he should have destroyed one, really, and then tied up another or maybe 2. As it turned out, he didn't. I was then able to position Drago and the Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knights and the Dreadnoughts in such a way that those 3 damage smites, because I do 3 damage smites against something with a demon keyword, basically cleared up those Helldrakes, guys, so that I didn't even count as falling back with the Dreadnought. I destroyed one. So then he was able to fire. Then I was able to use the Dreadnoughts to open up the Rhino nearest to me, so that meant that he had to foot slog the Berserkers across the board. You're starting to see how this is going, right? Oh, he had a Demon Prince in there as well. But
Sick.
Yeah, which is cool. But because he didn't have enough screening units, and obviously he's got Berserkers, which are an amazing unit, and he's his Prince, but he didn't really have anything to screen with to completely protect the Prince.
Yeah.
So he's moved everything forward because he needs to get to me. And my primary objectives and stuff that I'd be sitting on at the end of the game. So I gated my Dread Knights behind his Prince, so that the Prince was the nearest model, and then I put the Psychic Onslaught on, and actually I killed the Prince just with the shooting. I did 1 smite, which did 3 mortal wounds on him.
Yeah.
He did have the 6-up Feel No Pain and the extra wounds, which was a good call as a Warlord trait, I believe it is. But he failed those saves, so I'd already reduced him by 3, and then
He only has 5 wounds left at that point.
Right, and then I was 12 strength 5 at this point, D3 damage -1 shots, and 6 strength 8 -2 damage 2 shots. And after the smoke had settled from the guns, there was a pile of ooze, which was the Demon Prince.
Oh dear.
We banished him back to the warp. So I mean, it's quite cinematic, but at the same time, it sucked for him. That was his Warlords at this point as well. So in my first turn, I destroyed 2 Helldrakes. I destroyed a Rhino. I'd killed a substantial amount of Berserkers, and I'd killed his Prince. It wasn't looking hot. But he had his turn 2, his Obliterators came in, and then, my goodness, he did destroy Dreadnought, finally, but he just whiffed. He's like rolling low shots, damage 1, where he'd get the -3, but it's just damage 1, and I was actually making quite a few of my vulnerable 6-up Feel No Pain saves, classic Lawrence. So I was actually quite lucky this game, and he was unlucky. And then my damage 3 smites opened up again, because I deep struck in my strike marines in my turn 2, and I just did damage 3 smite, damage 3 smite, damage 3 smite, just killing an obliterator unit doing that. And in between the shooting on the venerable dreadnoughts and an additional smite, I finished off the other obliterators in my second turn, and at that point it was game, really.
Yeah.
I think Matthew will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, I think he conceded as we went into his turn 4. There wasn't any point continuing. He just had one berserker unit which was still trying to trundle up the board, but Khan was dead. The berserkers all on the middle and right flank were dead. It was just dead.
Yeah, that's it then, isn't it? It's a shame.
So basically, bad matchup for him and a good matchup for me, but could have been great for him because he got first turn. I think if he destroyed a dreadnought like he perhaps deserved to, and successfully tied up the other 2, granted with all my smites I probably still would have been able to destroy those Helldrakes, but if I'd gotten a bit unlucky, then maybe one dreadnought would have been tied up, which meaning that with only one dreadnought I wasn't guaranteed to blow up a Rhino, and he would have definitely had his berserkers in turn 2 then. Could have been a very different game, guys. You know, this is the way the dice go sometimes. So, you know, that was it. That was game 1. Awesome opponent. We had a beer afterwards, and I was off to a good start. So, let's see what happened in game 2 coming up next. So now we've got game 2 against the Aussie battler and boss Lee Ormsby.
G'day, mate.
Yeah. So
he'll understand that.
Oh, he'll understand it.
You probably
He's from
don't.
Melbourne. I don't understand.
You don't know what I'm saying.
No?
No.
What did you say?
Doesn't matter.
Very good.
You're not allowed to know.
Okay. Oh,
You should half know though.
I should half know.
Yeah.
Because I am half from the place.
Yeah, so you just know the mate bit.
Yes.
But the g'day will be
What
shrouded in mystery. Yeah, don't worry about it.
So, Lee, great game, really tactical game, great player. Nasty list, again though, funnily enough, because of the prevalence of the demon keyword in his Death Guard army with a Nurgle demon detachment, it gave me some advantages in a way, but also is very tough in a way because he's got Disgustingly Resilient.
Yeah.
And actually, he was rolling quite well on those Disgustingly Resilient saves. I mean, you've got a 33% chance of making that save. So,
Which is...
yeah. Well, the average is if I do 3 mortal wounds to you, you're going to save 1. Which, you know, it's a substantial reduction.
Yeah.
So, great Death Guard list. Poxwalkers, good screening, 3 Plague Burst Crawlers. They are still the absolute bomb. They're an amazing vehicle. He had in his Nurgle, and he had 2 of the Fetid Bloat drones.
Yeah.
He then had a unit of Plague drones from the Demons detachment with a couple of Heralds to help buff up his and heal his Plague Burst Crawlers. So he had a gun castle, basically. Chaos Lord there for the reroll 1s on the mortars. Again, pictures will be coming up on the screen here, guys, as I'm talking about this. But overall, a really sturdy list. The basic element was, and he had a Demon Prince as well, the basic element was that the Prince went forward with these Fetid Bloat drones and the Plague drones, which are all very resilient and actually really quite hard to take out and great in combat.
I love Fetid Bloat drones.
They're good, aren't they? They're so good. Like, the
Did he have flesh mowers?
He did have flesh mowers. No, sorry, he didn't. Forgive me.
He didn't?
He took the Plague Spitters.
Okay, you went for a shooty shoot.
Yeah, but to be fair, the Plague Spitters are really good.
No.
They're probably I don't want to say they're the best choice because we've had great experiences with the flesh mowers.
Listen, I just think before you speak now.
I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Are they the best choice?
I don't know. Maybe.
It's controversial.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's controversial. It's all up in the air.
They're a great escort for the Prince.
Yeah.
Or Princes.
And did the Prince have Arch Contaminator?
He did have Arch Contaminator.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right. So what you're getting then is all of those rerolls to wound,
which is wild.
And it's a high rate of auto hitting shots.
I get that. I do appreciate it.
And then if you need to charge them, they're like more auto hitting shots.
Yeah.
It's nice. No joke.
It's nice.
Rerolling wounds.
Yeah, I like them.
I don't.
No, but you at least use your smite.
Well, I did have my smite, but he was rolling hot on his Disgustingly Resilient. So let's talk about the game. So he had a good list.
Yeah.
He did have a good list. I can't remember now if I went first or second. Because this Foxcast is late, you see, because we've been so busy. Lee will be able to say. I have a feeling he went first, actually. I could be wrong. Oh no, maybe I did. Maybe I did. I think I went first. Anyway.
Regardless.
It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Right, to cut a long story short, I did power up my Dread Knight. I do remember he didn't have a tremendous amount of shooting other than the Plague Burst Crawlers anyway. I did manage to power up my Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knights. I had my Dreadnoughts on the left flank, had my Dread Knight on the right flank, with Drago and co, and the Interceptors went up the right flank. And basically what I ended up doing is have my Dreadnoughts stay in the back corner, move forward slightly, and just continue to pound his fetid bloke drones. That's what I was trying to go for. I did then change tact and start going for the Plague Burst Crawlers, but they're so resilient, guys.
Yeah, they just...
5+ invulnerable save followed by more 5s. I wasn't rolling particularly hot on my damage rolls. There were quite a few, I think it was 2 turns where I also just failed to hit with with the 2+ hitting.
What's wrong with you?
I wasn't rolling that well overall, but to be fair, the couple of opening turns against Lee, I wasn't particularly unlucky, I wasn't particularly lucky, but then towards the end I started getting real lucky. Like real lucky, and his disgustingly resilience started to crumble, and so we can start to see how this was going.
The light of the Emperor shone through.
Yeah. Now, yeah, that's right. Exactly. We banished him. So his left flank, or rather his right flank, was completely laden in Poxwalkers around the primary objectives and gathering Maelstrom points, and the game was tight the whole way. You know, we were very much Maelstrom this, Maelstrom there, Maelstrom this, Maelstrom there, and it was going to come down to who was on the primary objectives at the end of the game, and you know, who could just get the tweak on the Maelstrom as well. Now, as it turned out, I believe the tertiary I was up on. I think I did get the first strike. If I remember correctly, I did get the first strike. I can't remember on what it was. I think it was maybe a unit of... might have been a unit of Poxwalkers, a unit of 10 Poxwalkers. Can't remember. Lee will be able to tell me. But I did manage to get that one up on the tertiary.
Yeah.
So that meant that he knew that he needed to win on the primary or the secondary, because it was going to be quite difficult to get rid of my Warlords, being this guy, who for the first 3 turns did have the 2+ invulnerable save effective.
3 turns?
Yeah, although he got his smites off and I failed to deny, so he did start whittling him down.
Right.
And in the end, by the end of the game, he actually, I think he had killed the Dread Knight, so he got Warlords, but I'd also gotten his Warlord.
Right.
And I'd taken out one of his Plague Burst Crawlers, 2 were severely damaged, and then by on the last turn I think I finally got the second Plague Burst Crawler. But the tactics went, his bloat drones came out, his plague drones came out, I came in heavy on the right flank and then deep struck in with my Strike Marines, and I did as many damage 3 smites as I could on all of those nasty Demon Prints, the fetid bloat drones and the plague drones. And then I managed to get some charges off, and specifically I managed to get a charge off, this was significant, with my Grandmaster against his Prince. And when I made that charge, I managed to kill him, and that was pretty huge, because if I had failed that charge, he would have then been able to counter against me, and really taken all of the Marines that I had around there to town. So, you know, that was one of the significant turning points in the game. But to cut a long story short, I managed to crush the right flank. Over 3 turns. It was a real gruel fest, and actually the fetid bloke drones stayed alive for 3 turns.
That's what they do.
That's what they do, you know, and the plague drones were really difficult to deal with as well. And it did take me 3 turns to get the crush on that flank, but once I did, a few Strike Marines and some Interceptors emerged, bloodied, battered, along with Kaldor Drago and a very damaged Nemesis Dread Knight. And then we proceeded to try and sweep our way towards the Plague Burst Crawlers.
Right.
And what had happened is I'd managed to shut down one of the Plague Burst Crawlers for 2 turns, so I wasn't getting that horrible mortar fire with the reroll 1s from one of them with a couple of units of Strike Marines, and I'd managed to plough off some wounds and weaken it, and then I finally managed to destroy it with some las cannon fire.
Sure.
Once all of the drones and everything were dead. So by the time that we had gotten to turn 4, I'd effectively shut down his Plague Burst Crawlers.
Yeah.
And we were playing a bit of like a Laurel and Hardy or Tom and Jerry sort of run around the building thing. He was moving away from me, I was moving to tie him up, he was moving away, you know. And as it turned out, by the end of the game, I did manage to get the full points. I'd won the tertiary, because I got Line Breaker as well, so I just pipped him on that. I just gotten the Maelstrom and I'd gotten the Primary 2. So really hard fought game. The total points that I received at the end perhaps didn't reflect just how hard it was.
Yeah.
And it was a great game, really fantastic game. But we got our second victory. So at this point in the no retreat format, I'm on 2 maximum victories, which is 28 points to 0. And now I'm actually in the running to go and win the thing again. So it's like, okay, well, this is going better than I thought. I was hoping for 3 wins. I would have been really, really happy with 4 wins.
Yeah.
That was the way I was looking at it. And if I'd gotten 5 wins, I would have been like, oh, well, I must have been very, very lucky and got the right matchups or whatever. So right now we're on path. So we went into the final game of the day. And this, in some ways, was the one that I learned from the most. In fact, I think it is the one that I learned from the most, to be fair. So that's game 3. It's against Night Lords, and that's coming up next. Right, so Ian Jewell is who I played next with his beautiful Night Lords army. So they're painted beautifully. They're done by, I think, Iron Keep Studios. He'll leave a comment below and you might remind me, but really, really lovely army. Basically, a 30k army in 40k.
Yeah.
So a lot of Fortran in there from relic, or they call them Hellforged rather, being Chaos.
Which kind of makes sense. They've probably been chilling in the war.
Well, that's what they've got. Yeah,
and
I think Chaos. You would expect to see it more from Chaos.
Yeah.
With their, I want to see all these demon engines get better as well. But I won't go into a whole tangent there. But look, so what we had on paper is an interesting matchup because actually he's got nothing with the demon keywords, but more importantly than that, he's got a mechanized wall, and by a mechanized wall is actually he's bought an army of dreadnoughts and a Spartan, which is the Land Raider, the 30k I believe it is from the 30k period, and it is got 2 quad las cannons, so it's like 8 las cannon shots. Its toughness 8. It's a super heavy. It is a super heavy, and it had, I think it was 20 wounds.
It's going to be around there.
Yes, it's a Land Raider. It's not the most competitive thing, but it is pretty good. And actually, against an army like Grey Knights, it's very good. Yeah. And having an entirely armoured wall with only 3 minimum units of troops was kind of like my worst matchup. These were the matchups where I was like, this is exactly why I bought the Dreadnoughts, so that I can at least try and compete a bit. Because the Stormbolters just ping off of these, armour generally. So, I was like, right, okay, this is going to be tricky. However, his army's not massive. So what he ended up having was, he had a Leviathan of his own with the Butcher Cannons. He had a Doradio. He had 2 Contemptors. They all had the Greater Havoc missile launchers, which were really, really good against me as well because they ignored line of sight. Something like 3d3 strength 5 -1 shots ignoring line of sight. Basically perfect marine killers. I couldn't really hide my Space Marines from them, so he's got all of the tools here. He's got the Kiri's assault cannons with like 1,000,000 shots, which again just mow down Marines, and then the Butcher cannons are able to destroy things like dreadnoughts and do serious damage to a dread knight, etc, etc. So he's got all of the tools against me, and I don't have the best tools against him. However, I could win it by playing the mission and by getting the right kills on the right dreadnoughts early on.
Yeah.
And I knew that the Spartan was just going to be a problem. Like the way I would deal with the Spartan actually is with the Dread Knight. That's how I do. Now, the key thing with this game is that he's got a Chaos Lord, he's got a Sorcerer. I immediately ask at the beginning of the game, what powers do you have? As you do, So what I'm looking out for here is Death Hex, right? And he doesn't have Death Hex because at no retreat, you had to state your powers on the list when you submitted it. So you weren't allowed to pick before the game, okay? Now, at this point, this is on me, my naivety, if you like. I knew about Chaos Familiar as a stratagem, but I thought you had to do it before the game. So you do it during your deployment sort of thing. Right, I'm going to spend a CP on Chaos Familiar to switch out a power, which he never did. Okay? And that's why I asked to say, so you don't have Death Hex? He was like, no. I was like, okay. So I played assuming he didn't have it. So, which is a huge mistake. Now, obviously, the game was already on. He knew that I was asking about Death X, and he said he didn't have it. It's like, okay, fine. So, so what happened is, I believe I actually did get first turn against him, and I deployed. Luckily, we were on Hammer and Anvil deployment, so I was actually able to deploy the interceptors pretty safely out on the back line. And the way the Maelstrom went and I think this was the Maelstrom and kill point game, as I recall. Right. And that was why it was the other tough thing. Yeah. He didn't have many kill points.
No.
So it's like, It was like, okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah, nevertheless. Yeah. But the Maelstrom objectives, as they turned out, happened to sort of be mid-boards, right in the middle of the boards. So I knew I needed to get up there. And I got turn 1, I've got Heed the Prognosticars off, I've got Sanctuary off. I'm in a position now to really just tank stuff with my Dread Knight, and I gated him up right into the middle of the boards, but further forwards, so I'm still within 3 inches of this Maelstrom objective. I'm pretty sure it's the kill point one. Anyway, we'll work that out later. And I was able to get the points I needed for the mission that turn, and be in a position, because the way that he was with his Spartan and his Leviathan next to it and everything, be in a position where unless he moved away from me, and even if he did, I would be able to move forward and get a charge off relatively comfortably, especially with the reroll charge on the Dread Knight. Now, inside his Spartan are like a unit of Marines, the Sorcerer and the Lord, you know, protecting them all in a bubble, in a shell. And I've deployed approximately, must have been, I can probably work it out, but we'll come to the punchline in just a moment. So I've deployed a certain distance away where he's not in range to do a certain power, which he currently doesn't have.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got a 2-up invulnerable save. I'm threatening. I've managed to pop a Dreadnought turn 1,
which is nice.
Yeah, with my Dreadnoughts. So they've done their job. I think I got rid of the Contemptor. Got rid of the Contemptor Dreadnought.
Easy kill.
Yes, I went for the easy kill because he had 12 wounds. His save, he did. I think they still have the 5-up invulnerable save, but they had less wounds than Leviathan, and it was going to be more of a guaranteed first strike. So between my shooting on my interceptors, which also leapt forwards to get an objective, and they went to shoot some Marines as well, I think I managed to get the first strike. Ian will correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't really matter that much. But that's what I was trying to do, is just trying to get the points right. But the Dread Knight was in a really powerful position. And if he didn't deal with the Dread Knight, and if I just continued to make the 2-up saves and used a reroll, actually I would be in a dominant position in the game.
Yeah.
Because I was right there in his lines, right on his objectives, and it would completely give me the board control, and the Dread Knight would probably reliably be able to destroy one of his war machines a turn. And because he didn't have a massive army, that would have been huge.
Yeah.
All right. Now, as it turned out, his turn came, and he moved. He got his Sorcerer out, he got his Marines out, he got his Lord out, and he moved out towards the objectives. And it turned out he needed the objective, I think, funnily enough, that the Dread Knight was on.
Right.
And he rolled to advance his Sorcerer. And I didn't get the significance of this at the time, but he was very concerned about the roll. And he only rolled a 2.
It's not great.
No, and then he
was it enough?
He did some pre-measuring. I was like, you know, I was like, okay, you know, and he then moved the model out. And then, as it turns out, then come the psychic phase, he used Psychic Familiar. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, oh, now I'm taking Death Hex. And I was like, I thought you had to do that before the game. He's like, no. I was like, I see. So, you know, he obviously, he chose not to tell me, and I didn't know. So, you know, in a tournament game, that's the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, fair enough. I didn't know you could do that. If I'd known you could do that, I wouldn't have put the Dread Knight here. I would have put the Dread Knight here. Now, I wasn't saying that, but I'm saying that's what I would have, in my head, that's what I would have changed my strategy. Yeah. If you know that the model's got Death Hex, you're not going to deploy within Death Hex range, because the disadvantage of Death Hex is it's quite short range, and I could have easily deployed back so that it was physically impossible for him to use it next turn. Now, at this point, it's still not the end of the world, because he still needs to get the power off, which is a Warp Charge 8, okay? I get a +1 to my denies.
Yeah.
Plus I have a psychic channeling stratagem to roll 3d6 and pick the highest. which is significant. The problem is Ian then went to cast it on the Dread Knight, which is literally a millimetre in range of, and he rolls an 11. So at this point, I still have to use the psychic channeling anyway, because to not try and deny that power would be huge. So I needed to roll an 11 myself, because with the +1 it would have become a 12 and I would have got the deny off. I rolled 3d6, I didn't roll an 11, guys. I think it was actually insulting. I think I rolled something like a 6 with my 2 highest dice. So what does this mean? It meant that all of a sudden there was no invuln at all on the Dread Knight, which was huge.
That's a problem.
It was a massive problem. It was a massive, massive problem, because now the entire tactic I've built the army around, the play that I've built the army around in this particular game, is now null and void, and he should, in theory, easily be able to kill it. And guess what? He did easily kill it. And then on top of that, I just got really unlucky with just even the normal saves. Like his Curious Assault Cannons would mowed off a load of wounds. So to cut a long story short, he, between the quad las cannons on the Spartan and the first Dreadnought, he destroyed the Dread Knight. That was Warlord. In fact, I think I whiffed. I didn't get first strike. I remember him getting Warlord and first strike in one go.
Right.
Yeah, so that was like huge. So it's like, okay, massively on the back foot with tertiary, massively lost my mid-board control, and he's killed it really easily. Because the fact, even if he'd killed the Dread Knight, that wouldn't have mattered in turn 1. What mattered is that it took his whole army to do it.
Yeah.
Now he's done it with only 2 models, and he still had 3 other Dreadnoughts left. So then he proceeded to kill a load of Marines. Now at this point, you know, it's almost game winning for him straight away, just by that mistake that I've made. However, and that's what I learned. I was like, okay, now I need to know that Chaos Familiar can be employed whenever they want.
Yeah.
Because that's huge. You know, I would have completely changed the tactics based on that. So having said that, I was still able to try and win the game. And over the next few turns, I continued to play the missions, brought my Strike Marines in, continued to claw back Maelstrom points, and I ended up killing Leviathan with my Dreadnoughts. They powered up, and I killed another Contemptor. And the Doradio, and then the Contemptor on the left flank, I actually ended up killing in turn 4 in combat when it had 1 wound left by charging with one of my Dreadnoughts.
Very good.
Which was immensely satisfying.
Yes, I believe that would be.
Because he had a 2+ save and he rolled a 1.
Yes!
I was like, yeah!
Moral victory!
So what it came down to was he would win if he tabled me, but by the end actually I pretty much destroyed the Dreadnoughts, and he obviously had his Spartan left on pretty much full wounds as I recall. I killed his Sorcerer. Drago had gotten up there in the middle.
Yes,
and
he
I had Drago left on the board, and that was it.
Then what happened?
Well, he had his Chaos Lord there. Drago charged the Chaos Lords after he killed the Sorcerer, and he whiffed so bad. It was like I was rolling the ones to hit. I was rolling the ones to wound. I got the hits, and it's like 3-1, so I just failed to kill. It was actually, it was a Chaos Space Marine unit in front of the Lord, so I failed to kill 4 Chaos Space Marines with Drago. And then he opened up it then came down to, the Lord obviously didn't want to charge Drago because that was going to be very hit and miss for him. And that would have been his Warlords, yeah. So he opened up the quad las cannons, which is pretty much all he had left on the Dreadnought. On the Spartan. And it came down to whether I could make the Storm Shield saves. I didn't make the Storm Shield saves, guys. Didn't make them. And in fact, I think I got very unlucky with them. I failed 3 out of 4, so.
Good. It's good. It's really good.
Yes. So Drago died, and with Drago's death, so was the hope of the Grey Knight's victory, and therefore I lost, because in SN, when you're tabled, you just lose everything anyway, regardless of whether you could have potentially still won a tertiary or whatever the situation may have been. So got tabled effectively, and that was a 28-0 to him. So the run of the Grey Knights was gone, and all really because I didn't know about Psychic Familiar. Yeah, it was literally
very cheeky, Very cheeky.
Well played.
But you did answer your question honestly.
He did.
This is the thing.
I don't have Death X.
You don't have it. You don't. Yet. Ian. Cheeky.
So, you know, look, nothing you can do about that. And one of those moments where you learn immediately. Sometimes
the trust is misplaced. Trust no one in 40k, especially at a tournament.
Well, the thing is, it's the Night Lord way, isn't it?
Yes.
So he was playing his Legion
very well.
Conrad Kurz and all that.
Yeah.
So look, you know, that's where knowing your enemy is really important. And I didn't. It was, you know, my mistake. I didn't know that power. That stratagem could be used during the game, purely because I've never used it during the game. Never had the need to use it, and I've always, if I've run a Chaos Sorcerer, I'd always have Death Hex on them by default anyway.
Yeah.
To be honest, unless I was going for a very buffy thing with cultists, you know, maybe, but even then, I'd probably be running 2 sorcerers and one of them would have Death Hex. So, you know, I'd play it differently in the first place. But the point is, because I'd never used Chaos Familiar, and no one had ever used it that way against me, because I've always played people with sorcerers where they do have Death Hex anyway. Yeah, I just didn't know, and so that ultimately lost me the game. So lack of knowledge sometimes can be huge, you know.
That's just my problem in life.
That's it. That's a problem in life, yeah. So that was game 3. That was the end of day 1. I was still very happy on 2 max point victories, and I figured if I could get 2 more, if I was cheeky enough to get 2 more, I could still podium. And by podium, I mean get maybe 3rd place, maybe, you know, and that would have been awesome, because to place anywhere near the top with Grey Knights is well, it's farcical unto itself. So so I left day 1 rather, feeling good and ready for more war. Now I should mention as well, before we go into game 4, that at this point I'd already played 2 practice games the night before, the 2 days before No Retreat, and I'd won both of them pretty soundly. So I was like, and it was against Space Wolves, and I played Stig's Admech. What was the other game I played?
I don't know.
I played another game. I can't think of it now. I've had a brain meltdown. But I was already, I was kind of working how I'd hoped it would. So I was like, okay, I reckon, all right, I've had a bad match up there and I made a huge mistake. I should be able to pull it back. Then we went into day 2. So that's coming up next. So we go into game 4.
Dun, dun, dun.
Da, da, da. And actually the music's appropriate. I'm hearing it anyway, because I was playing Knights led by Winters. Now, regardless of who it was led by, I was playing Knights.
Yeah.
So the music was appropriate, because Grey Knights versus Imperial Knights is not a fun matchup.
No. Nothing about that sounds good. I don't like playing Knights with any army.
Right, well, I mean, some people say that anyway, yeah, true. Yeah. But I think Grey Knights in particular, what you've got there is a disparity of power between the codexes. The Grey Knights codex, even as a standalone army, are exceptionally good right now. We've already made the comparison of the Helverins points cost versus my Venerable Dreadnought. You know, there is no comparison. So, and I've got a lot of Stormbolters against toughness 8 chassis.
Yeah. It's not great.
Now, the irony is, throughout this game, that the Stormbolters did more damage, generally, due to Winters just rolling really badly against the Stormbolters saves, than the Lascannons and Missile Launchers did. Funnily enough. I don't know why, but that's the way it played. Now, let's go over the game. So, the first thing that I wanted turn 1. Okay, to be able to have a fighting chance. Now, the minute I did this matchup, now Winters is obviously on 2 max point wins at this point. In fact, I think he was on 3 wins at this point. He'd lost one of his games, but I don't know if he lost it on day 2 or day 1. Anyway, it was basically a very unlucky matchup. There wasn't really any reason why we would be playing each other. The Knights should have overtaken the Grey Knights, you know, way ahead anyway. But as the cookie crumbled, I've gone from one mech wall where I made a massive mistake to the ultimate mech wall, and this game was basically a write-off before it began. Was it possible for me to win? Yeah, technically it would be possible, but very unlikely, guys. Very, very unlikely. So I went into the game going, right, well, I'm going to try and play the mission. I'm going to hope to get really lucky to down some of these knights, you know, and make the charges when I need to. So what we did is, I wanted first turn, I didn't get first turn.
If I see that,
well, what can you do? I didn't win the roll-off.
Yeah.
Now, but the funny thing is Winters was kind enough to make it interesting by rolling just really badly on his first turn. So he actually failed to kill a Dreadnought. Now, it wasn't completely down to him rolling badly. To be fair, the way he had deployed and in the way I'd deployed heavy on one flank is I had out-deployed him, and actually 2 of his big knights were basically out of range.
Right.
So I'd heavily reduced the armour, the firepower that he could send against me. So there was a bit of tactics involved there, at least. But I still wanted first turn, and he still should have statistically destroyed a Dreadnought. No problem. But he failed to do so. Okay? He rolled very badly. There was no doubt about that. He took the Valiant. By the way, guys, you probably wanted to know, he's got a Valiant, he's got a Crusader, he had a Warden with Endless Fury, and the Valiant, of course, had the Relic Flamer, and he had 2 Armigers with the Thermal Spears. Now, again, most people would say, oh, why don't you take the Helverins? But actually, the Armigers are really good. Do not underestimate them. He's running Hawk Shroud as well, which is another significant buff because it meant that he would pretty much be acting at his top profile, even when he was quite badly damaged, which is huge. It's a huge advantage for knights because it's one of the ways you can get around knights is to try and reduce them in damage a bit, except now you can't really do that. So he had all of the tools to deal with my stuff, and I had very few tools to deal with his. So as it turned out, he's had his first turn. He's gotten quite a few points. He's had a pretty tasty Maelstrom draw, as I recall. My Maelstrom draw wasn't too bad either. So when he went into my turn 1, I'd gotten a bit of Maelstrom my side as well. And I did go for one of his Armigers because I was trying to get first strike, because I was like, right, well, I'm going to try and capitalise on this. And I do believe, as I recall, I did destroy one of the Armigers. So that was nice. That is pretty much all I did. Okay, when I destroyed an Armiger, I'd started to go for, I think it was the Crusader, if I remember correctly. Winters will say anyway. I went for one of the big knights, but not the Valiant, okay? Because I knew the Valiant, of course, had the better ion shield save, so he'd be having a 3-up invuln there. And I was like, well, I'm not interested in firing my few lads cannons in there.
Yeah, I'm not dealing with that right now.
No, I knew that I'd need to take that guy out in combat. You know, that was the plan. So anyway, I did my Interceptors and my Dread Knight Grandmaster. And we got into a position to charge. We did do a bit of damage on this big knight with the reroll charges, and including a reroll on one of the dice to make the charge with Interceptors, etc. I failed the charges, guys. And in fact, we can continue the game by saying I failed the charges, guys. Every single charge, every single turn, for 3 turns, until I finally did make a charge with the Dread Knights. Got 5 hits in combat against the Crusader and rolled 4 ones to wound.
Now, I didn't touch these dice. This is not... This is unusual!
I would have preferred to have failed to hit in the first place, and even with the reroll failed to hit, rather than give me the 5 hits and then roll 4 ones.
It's like, yeah, here's your hope. Oh,
yeah,
it's gone.
It was insulting. I proceeded to perils with Drago twice.
Oh dear.
So Drago was killing himself. Now I was doing some quite clever things. I would hide Drago behind a ruin where the knight literally couldn't see you, and then roll to charge the Valiant so that he couldn't overwatch.
Very good.
But I didn't make a single one of those 9-inch charges.
It's a shame. It's a real shame.
It was a shame, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, despite all of this, despite whiffing so horrifically, and him cleaning up my Marines, etc., etc., I was consistently plinking off the cheeky mortal wounds with smite, 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 and the dreadnoughts were continuing to do their thing in the corner.
Yeah, as they do.
Yeah, you know, just reliably, not reliably, but trying to keep me in the game, guys.
Yeah.
Now, by the end of the game, I've destroyed all of his knights. I've destroyed the Valiant. Bar, it's his Crusader with Endless Fury. I'm going to the end picture here. By this point, you've got all of the pictures coming up. So I've somehow managed to actually be in a position to win the game. Which is stupid, by the way, but that is what's happened. So looking at the last picture here, yeah, he's got his Warden left. And he's got one Armiger left. I've got one Dreadnought left, and I've got our Lord and Saviour, Kaldor Drago, left. He destroys the Dreadnought.
Of course he does.
I then destroy his last Armiger.
Oh wait, sorry, the other way around.
Yeah. Now, he destroys my Dreadnought. Remember, he's got the Armiger and he's got his Warden left. I then, with Drago, destroy his last Armiger. And at this point, it's pretty epic, to be fair.
Yeah.
What shouldn't have been an interesting game, suddenly in the last turn became sort of... It wasn't interesting, it never was. Like, I was never likely going to win the game, but it became quite funny, because actually all of a sudden I had a chance to win it.
Yeah. Because
he's got one knight left, who's semi-damaged at this point, and I've got Drago left on 2 wounds.
Yes.
That's it. So then it came to Drago and this Warden left on the field. I think he was the Warden. It might be the Errant, actually. Anyway, one big knight left, right? And he had this turn. I think this was turn 4 at this point. Again, Winters, correct me if I'm wrong. And Drago's there. He raises his shields. He's lost wounds so far because he's perils twice. But right now it comes down to, again, the 3+ invulnerable saves that I can make. Because if Drago gets into combat with his flat damage 3 sword and do a hammer hand, actually I could destroy the knight.
Yeah.
I could destroy the knight over a couple of turns. He's already a bit damaged now anyway. So I move Drago, after destroying the Helverin, towards the knight, and I issue a challenge to this Renegade Mechanicus Forge. Okay, because that's what they are. They're renegades. They are traitors to the Imperium. I'm the loyalist.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
And he does his shooting, and I fail my 3+ invulnerable saves, and I die.
You die, and that was it.
So tabled. So what did that mean? That again, because of the no retreat scoring format, unlike a normal ITC mission, despite winning on the tertiary at this point, I think I was winning on one of them. I was winning on the Maelstrom. I didn't get any of the points, and so it was a 28-0 victory, which, to be fair, it probably always should have been. But the fact that it had managed to suddenly become that maybe I could win was quite funny.
That's huge.
Well, it is huge. I mean, look, to be fair, I was very happy that I'd managed to get that far against Knights with Grey Knights. So that was it.
You were rolling not that hot.
Oh, no.
As well.
Well, this is the funny thing. Winter said, actually, because the Knight... I didn't mention this. When I rolled those 4 ones, by the way, his Knight only had 7 wounds left. And I had a D6 damage weapon. So... You know, if I'd gotten those wounds, which the average was I should have, if I'd gotten those wounds, I only needed 3 wounds, really. On 3d6, I should have gotten the 7, and then his knight was destroyed. But what happened was then, and that's right, that was his Warden. So then that suddenly gave him another turn, firing those 14 shots.
Yeah, which is huge.
Yeah, and yeah. So, you know, there was another turn of fire I had to take from basically an effectively undamaged knight because he was using Hawkshroud.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, if I had actually destroyed that knight in turn 3, we would have won the game. Winter said, you think we would have won the game then? Because it made such a huge difference, such a huge difference. But that's not what happens, you know, this is the way it goes. So, you know, at this point, I've got 2 max wins, but I've also got 2 max losses. So I know I'm out of the running for a podium, but if I can at least get 1 more max win, I will be upper mids table to nearing the top 10. Or potentially top 10, which again, with a top 10 finish, I'd be really, really happy with. So that was game 4. We then went into game 5, and yet again we have a mech wall. Now there's plenty of infantry armies at No Retreat, I just didn't play them. Which was unfortunate. But let's cover game 5, that's coming up next. So the final game of No Retreat, it was game 5, it was against the mega boss Mark Flay. And Mark Flay and I are basically old friends on the battlefield because I played him at Heat 1.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but when he had his Necrons.
It's like come full circle.
It's come full circle. Now, that time I had a massive advantage because I was running the Guilliman gun line parking lots and he was running Necrons. So that wasn't very fair, although we did have a fun game and Artemis
You were playing
moved out.
right behind me.
Yeah,
I remember
that's
that
right.
game. His
Yeah.
army looked lovely.
Yeah, really nice army. Really lovely army. And then now the tables have turned. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dreadnoughts in his army.
It's too many. It's too many. You're getting greedy now.
Salamanders for the rerolls.
Oh, very good.
Which is fantastic. And actually, he's been doing all right himself at this point. A couple of max point wins. He's got 2 Ironclad Dreadnoughts, which have the toughness 8, which is harder for my Stormbolters to hurt. He's got 2 Venerable Dreadnoughts himself. Twin las cannons, the same sort of situations. In fact, he's got 3 of them by the looks of it. 2 Redemptors, and he's got the Forge World Dreadnought as his HQ, Salamander Dreadnought. So right now we're in mech wall hell, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. And it was a tough game. It was a tough game. So luckily for me, I'd won the roll-off for deployment, and I'd picked the side of the board where I had these massive buildings, and I was actually really able to hide a lot of my stuff so that he couldn't really do too much turn 1. Also, given the deployment type, which in this instance was, I think it was Search and Destroy we were playing, deployment map-wise, I was able to deploy really quite far away from him.
Right.
So a lot of his guns were out of range, not his las cannons and stuff, but they couldn't see. So I was able to just neuter his first turn, effectively. And then between my Astral Aim, and then I moved out a couple of dreadnoughts, I popped off a couple of his las cannon dreadnoughts.
Oh, very good.
So I'd rolled well enough on my damage rolls there. And then I had my interceptors jump behind him, and I'd sort of cornered him then. And so he was forced to either move back to deal with my interceptors or continue moving forward where all of the objectives were. He did the right thing and he chose to move forward towards the objectives, but he was sort of caught between a rock and a hard place at this point, because then I was able to bring the interceptors out behind his lines, clear up a lot of his chaff, and then engage with 1 more of the dreadnoughts. And actually, when I had Hammerhand on a unit, the falchions weren't too bad at taking out the dreadnoughts. They are D3 damage. But again, as was usually the case in all of my games, the 3 dreadnoughts and the Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knights were absolutely the MVPs. This guy just tanking hits on his saves and then moving in and smashing dreadnoughts in combat really did the business. And as the dust settled, it was a tight Maelstrom game. We were very much going, like this, and this. But as the dust settled, I managed to finally kill off the last of his scouts, get rid of his dreadnoughts, and I think we actually did go 5 turns in the end. Mark will tell me if I'm wrong. And I managed to get the full win. The main reason for that is, despite it being a very tough matchup, I think because the terrain really favoured me, and I got the luck where I needed it to on the charges, which, by the way, guys, he pretty much killed all of my Marines, bar 5 strike Marines by the end of the game as well. Like, I'd been hammered. And he killed the Dread Knight in the end as well, I'm pretty sure. He got Warlords too. But by that point, I had Drago, 1 unit of 5 Marines still on the primary objective, and I had my Dreadnoughts. I had 2 of them left, and he only had 1 Dreadnought. And with Astral Aim, I just blew them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it, really. So I just managed to get the win in the end. I managed to win the War of Attrition, mainly because I was able to hide better than he was.
It's terrain.
It's terrain. But, great game. And that meant that I did end up on 3 max wins. So in the end, I got 328 zeros, 2 zeros, and that put me in lucky 13.
Hey, for some.
for some.
For you.
So, yeah, for me. So just shy of the top 10. And Lewis Elms, with a very unusual Fluffy Tau army, which he played masterfully, got first place. And congratulations to him too. He's a great player. I didn't obviously play him at this event, but I did play him at No Retreat 3.
It wasn't the one I was at.
No. Played him at a No Retreats where I had my Dark Elder. It was one of the No Retreats where I won it, and I played him, and he was actually my toughest game, which is interesting. I've got him like in the 4th round or something, and he'd been doing really well. So I know he's a really good player, so he deserves to win with that list. You know, it's like to do that well with that list is pretty impressive. So no, that was it. That was No Retreat. Another one done. Well, let Stig talk about his games and his results another time. My takeaways, army-wise, I think Drago often did the babysitting and very often didn't do much for me.
Killed Helfrey.
He did kill Helfrey.
Which is pretty cool.
That was cool. And I think he finished off one of Lee's Plague Burst Crawlers. So in 2 of the games he did something. But in the majority of the games he literally sat by the Dreadnoughts and just gave them reroll 1s. He was probably a waste of points for me overall.
Yeah.
And I think we've learnt that just doing battle reports since as well. So I'll try and get this army on right here on Freeview for you soon, if you'd like to see it. But overall, the rest of the army kind of worked how I want. Now, I've got lots of thoughts about how I'm going to improve the army going forward, but I won't talk about that now. But suffice to say, it was an awesome event. I was very happy with the results. And that's it, you know, another No Retreat down. So if you guys are interested in checking them out, you can go to smbattlereports.com, and they do have another No Retreat happening next year, but before then they've got a grand tournament as well, which they'll be hosting in Gibraltar. It is currently sold out, but more tickets may become available, so you can always check it out.
There's a wait list at the moment, I think.
Right, yeah. Okay. So any final thoughts from yourself, Mr. Bone?
No, I mean, it sounds like if a couple of other things had gone your way, I think you probably could have even got 4 wins.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Maybe even 5. Who knows?
It's possible with the matchup. If I dodged the mech walls.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, you did perform really well against armies that you shouldn't have. Really.
That is true. Yeah, so, I gave it a game.
Yeah, you gave it a game. So I mean, you know, it just goes to show that you know, if it comes down to generalship. Even if you've got a mathematical disadvantage, you know, if you want to play armies like this and you back yourself as a good player, it's possible to do really well with them. So I think Grey Knights players should rejoice. I also think I think that the way to fix Grey Knights, or one of them, they need a point reduction, but also if you just gave them all the D3 smite, then actually it would make the army incredibly viable, because like listening to the games that you played where you actually were getting the flat 3 smite, and if you want to give them that flavour against demons, they can still have that against demons.
Sure.
But everyone else, they should just get their D3.
Yeah.
Then actually this
like
army...
1,000 Suns.
Yeah, exactly. A bit like the 1,000 Suns, right? Then actually this army would be very interesting.
It would be interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Because then, you don't need as much anti-mech when you're pumping out that many mortal wounds.
Yeah.
And then actually when you pay, 24, 25 points for a Strike Marine?
25.
You kind of go, well, yeah, but I mean the unit is doing D3 smite every turn. And then you kind of go, I get the points there. I think that's all they need.
Yeah,
maybe there's a couple of other things you could tinker the points with.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you did that, then the army is viable. Very viable again.
Yeah.
And you've kind of proven that with how you can play it. Yeah. Imagine if you were getting D3 smites against all those knights.
Oh, it would have changed the game.
Yeah.
It would have changed the game.
And I don't think in a way which would have tilted it too far in your favour. I don't think it actually makes them too strong, given on how many points you have to invest in the army.
It's still only a 12-inch range. But at least then it gives you incentive to spend another 150 odd points on a captain, who then gives a 6-inch double the smite range bubble. I think they should have the D3. I also think that they should have access to the Space Marine discipline and the Inquisition discipline, much like Tzeentch have access to all 3 of the Tzeentch disciplines. Because we should have access to a removing an invulnerable save as well.
Yeah.
You know, Null Zone. Like, Grey Knights are supposed to be the premium psychers, and they just don't feel like that.
Premium psychers at all.
Like, I mean, a Space Marine librarian has a better smite than a Grey Knight librarian, and you're like, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to make any sense.
It's just really peculiar.
Yeah.
Really peculiar.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that the game has evolved. It's taken away the flavour from this army completely.
Yeah.
So, like, at least when you could have deep strike turn 1, you had that.
Yeah.
And then these guys with all their storm bolters, that's a problem. I don't like.
It is a problem.
My Tau Gunline does not want to play that any day of the week. That's horrible. And then you've also got Vortex of Doom when you come down with that. Like, turn 1, that's interesting. When it's turn 2, and then you've got a lack of psychic support.
Yeah.
It's just an expensive army.
Yeah, and you're paying all these points for these specials you can't really use.
Yeah, which is a shame.
The other interesting thing is as well, for the past 2 editions before 8th edition, Grey Knights had a special detachment or an ability to be able to deep strike turn 1. So Nemesis Strike Force, it was called. And actually, that was like a rule which was kind of unique to Grey Knights, because previously you could only deep strike in turn 2 onwards. I would love to see them bring that, if they keep the base deep strike rules, bring that back for Grey Knights, because actually they've set the precedent before.
Yep.
They're forcing you to spend points on the deep strike ability, but you are forced to not be able to use it across half the army turn 1. So that's not fair anymore. So if you're forced to pay for something, you should at least be able to use it in a viable way. The thing is, it wouldn't even just allowing maybe they bring a special detachment for them, or they just give them the special rule, Nemesis Strike Force or whatever. However they balance it, but it wouldn't be overpowered for them either, and it would give them again another unique twist, because they don't have a massive unit selection, and they will always have certain weaknesses, anti-tank and so forth. So to give them these quirks enables them to at least compete, yeah, which would be cool. But who knows? This is all pre-chapter approved talk.
Not long now.
It's not long now.
A couple of months.
That's it.
3 tournaments in there, but a couple of months.
I've got 3 tournaments to go to with them. Without it, yeah. We'll see what happens. So guys, hope you've enjoyed that Voxcast and a little chat about Grey Knights. Bone has been here as a soundboard.
Yes.
So
I said some things.
Yeah, your opinions are always valued, so it's nice. I agree the D3 smite would just make it more interesting, but who knows? We'll see what chapter approved brings. So until next time, it's been the Spider and the Bone. We'll see you soon.